Welcome back to Chain Reaction, the Foreign Policy Research Institute's flagship network of podcast series examining the political, security, economic, and social trends shaping our world. Throughout the year, we'll be talking with experts about developments in Russia's war in Ukraine, the new European security order, defense and geopolitical issues in the Baltic states, as well as current and future national security challenges and opportunities in the technology and space sectors. Join us each month for
Bear Market Brief,
Behind the Front,
Baltic Ways,
Report in Short,
The Ties That Bind, NATO Allies in Action. New episodes are available each week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and most streaming services. To be the first to know about new releases, you can subscribe to FPRI's Insights newsletter. That's fprinsights.substack.com, or follow the link available in the description of this episode. Thanks for joining us. This week on Behind the Front.
War rages in Europe. Tensions are rising in the South China Sea, but budgets in the United States are flat. America has struggled to build new weapons quickly and cheaply. The Air Force is one such victim, with the time needed to build, test, and then field new designs taking longer than ever, and prices rising in tandem. How might air power change? What might it mean for European security and for any potential operation within the First Island chain? On today's show, I sat down with Andrew Van Timmeren. He also goes by Scar, a former fighter pilot and now senior director at Anduril Systems, where he is working on the combat collaborative aircraft, the YFQ-44A, also known as Fury, where we also discuss the future of air power, the European theater, and what it could mean for the Indo-Pacific fight. Enjoy the show. Scar, a lot of people, you and I have known each other for a little while. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump into the conversation about the future of autonomous air power.
No, thanks, Aaron. So personal, born and raised in Michigan, Air Force Academy, master's at University of Michigan, and went to pilot training, dropped the Raptor, so F-22 guy for my career in the Air Force. I was unfortunately then, after about the 10-year mark, diagnosed with a neuromuscular disorder. I'm going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. But it removed me against my will genuinely from, I wish I was still flying. I love what the air domain can provide in its mission, but I got medically retired from the Air Force. And along that time, I started getting involved in some of the innovation ecosystem within the military, DIU or AFWorks, etc. Got involved with ABMS, so Advanced Battle Management System, the Air Force is offering at that time for Joint All-Domain Command and Control. And then all the while I was working for this small business, working on this crazy idea for this unmanned fighter. And they were based out of North Carolina called Blue Force Technologies. We won an SBIR phase 1, then turned that into an SBIR phase 2. So small business innovation research for to try and keep away from the acronyms there. And then we won a strategic financing or StratFi contract to Air Force Research Lab and Air Combat Command to develop this unmanned fighter, principally for unmanned adversary air, because it's similarly to how the Army and others have what are called the OP4 on the ground, which are the people meant to mimic the adversaries that you'll go against. In the air, we have the exact same thing. They're called the aggressors. And so we were looking to modernize that through an unmanned fighter. All along that time, we're now like just time stamping everybody in the 22, 23 timeframe. Secretary of the Air Force Frank Kendall came up with a handful of operational imperatives. One of those was next generation aerial dominance family of systems. So not just the manned platform, which is now called the F-47, but also its unmanned collaborators, now called collaborative combat aircraft. We at Blue Force and Anduril found ourselves working on this problem, and one thing led to another, and Blue Force got acquired by Anduril, which is a match made in heaven. The puzzle pieces aligned perfectly, and then we were able and blessed, just to survive the down selection from 5 competitors down to 2. And so now, I'm continue to work at Anduril in supporting CCA and our high performance unmanned systems.
Yeah, so I think we should get this out of the way. You clearly have an interest in the future of CCAs because you work for a company that has the YFQ-44A, which is one of 2, I guess, down selects for the CCA program, the other being from General Atomics. We'll talk about how it can apply to theaters, but what is it for people who've never heard anything about it?
No, that's a great. So YFQ-44A, Anduril colloquially calls it the Fury, but the Air Force has not designated either of these offerings an official name, to be put into the history books just yet. Um, it is it is an open architecture, easily manufacturable, affordable fighter. And I'm not here to hawk our wares at all. I hope truth in lending. I'm here to talk about a capability that YFQ-44A can truly get after, which is leveraging increased risk onto unmanned systems of caliber and credibility that the adversary has to respect. And they can be in collaboration, in teaming with manned platforms, or they can go out on their own and do a mission, semi-autonomously with humans on the loop. But genuinely, YFQ-44A is there to facilitate the combatant commander and then the CFAC as the offerer of air forces and commander of air forces in a combatant command, their ability to achieve their mission while lowering that risk. Because I think you and your listeners and readers understand as technology gets more mature, more proliferated, what was once behind the door in the DoD is now readily available commercially and democratized around the globe. Uh, the time between even just 2010 and 2025 now, the world has changed. It's a very high threat scenario, a high risk scenario for our crude platforms to go into using China as a pacing threat, but Russia certainly, undoubtedly. And so we are looking to figure out a way that we can still accomplish our missions while providing a level of risk that's acceptable to those manned platforms. And I think that's one of the key enablers that CCA provides as a program.
So, one of the adages you hear a lot is that we built a military to fight the Soviets and then used it to fight the Iraqis twice and then to occupy Afghanistan once and a few things in the Balkans in between. And now we're trying to use that same equipment to optimize for a fight in China. And then the CCA would obviously be something built new on spec for that specific, let's say, China contingency. Can you talk through like the challenges of thinking about the vast distances in the Pacific? Because this is a European focused podcast. We're going to come back to why that may help in the European contingency as well.
Oh, so I'll start with a platform that I'm comfortable with that was designed for that European theater, which was the Raptor. The Raptor is an amazing airplane capable of turning on a dime, seeing things before it can get seen, and it's also really good at burning gas really, really, really well. But you know what you also have in Europe? Runways, in fuel stops, in places where you can quickly get gas, reload, and then take off again. That is a luxury that is not there in the Pacific. You look at a globe, not a representative globe of the size, not a Mercator projection, right? Like everybody pick their own favorite geographical reference. It is a large, vast area with very limited pockets of civilization, let alone sustained logistical support for a high performance LO asset like say a Raptor. It's there, but it's in much more limited quantity than maybe the availability in Europe. And so what does that mean? That drives meaningful design choices with that focus where you may consider range being of incredible importance because you have to be able to go from piece of concrete to piece of concrete that isn't just the neighboring state over.
Right.
And not only get there, but also not demand a lot when you get there. And one of the things I'll just key in on for people who are listening, if you go online and do a Google image search for YFQ-44 and YFQ-42, one thing I will just say that's different about this program before we get into like its application to Europe, which I think is also critical, is one of the acquisition ways that the program is doing things differently is getting after attributes, not necessarily requirements. People decry requirements creep and requirements fidelity all the way down to say somebody in the government or in a customer saying yea verily thou shalt use left-handed bolts. Well, maybe you don't care about that. Maybe you just are putting out, I want it to fly this far, fly this fast, carry this capability. And then what you do is you provide that space for industry to use its creativity to provide a solution that facilitates those attributes. So if you getting back to my Google image search recommendation, you'll actually see that both offerings, they look completely different as platforms, but they actually both satisfy what the Air Force is looking for. I think it's really critical and really important for us to consider as like follow-on acquisitions going forward.
One of the questions I have for you is it doesn't seem like the Air Force has a basic idea of what they want to do with it, right? But I don't think they figured out how to operationalize that yet. So what's the mingling between, well, one, do you agree with that? And then I don't mean that as a negative on the Air Force. I just think it's new. And then two, sort of how does the private, let's say public sort of process here mingle into sort of how you would actually use these things and what you would build them to in the absence of specific requirements?
No, I think those are really good questions, Aaron, and I'll just leverage examples from history, which I assume will create a trend line of going forward. So when the F-22, I'll just continue to lean on that. It,
It's your plane, man.
I mean, she was my baby for a long time. I miss her dearly. The Raptor, when it first came out, its tactics, techniques, and procedures were not honestly that dissimilar from the Eagle, which many of the personnel that were early operators of the Raptor came from the C model F-15C air dominance community. Rightfully so. They have the skill set and they think about counter air every single day. But many of those tactics were the same, despite the fact that the machine was
Right.
completely different capabilities. And so you actually have to learn and grow and develop, and you end up realizing, no, we don't execute Eagle tactics in our Raptor. We can maybe do things a little bit differently. And now it's own thing. And we are actually quite different in how we tackle very similar tasks. It's just because the tool that the I'll say man, there's a personnel, you think about man and machine. If you change the machine, the person also change how they do things. And so that is an example where I think we are thinking about when it comes to operational utility of these platforms, we're thinking about them in a very, how does it integrate in existing force packaging? And now, once we get them out into the Nellis range or the Utah range, or we get them out in fielded, we might realize, and it might take a couple of years, and that's okay, because that's what it is. You just might realize we have a different way we should be doing things. And it might fly in the complete face of how we're thinking about it now. And I don't sound an alarm that we're not there yet. I think that that's okay. The airplane hasn't even had first flight. And so we have a lot we have to learn. There's a lot we're going to accelerate through. And I'm happy to say that the program office said we're going to move quickly. This is accelerated affordable mass to the field, all in on that. But we still have much to learn when it comes to ConOps and TTPs. And I think that that's okay. Here in the summer of 25, us not having that laid flat yet is totally fine under the normal maturation process of a new weapon system.
Hey everybody, I just wanted to take a minute from my conversation with SCAR to tell you all about a publication we launched at FPRI called Behind the Front. Behind the Front is where we at FPRI will analyze current and future national security challenges to the United States with a specific focus on the defense industrial base, fixing our broken military procurement system, looking at lessons learned from ongoing conflicts, and the challenges and opportunities in the technology and emerging space sector. Check it out at behindthefront.substack.com. And now back to our conversation. When I think about this potential system, it makes a lot of sense for Europe because there's runways everywhere. Europe is, not to sort of cast aspersions on our European friends, it's a relatively small place. And then it's smaller still when you compact it into, say, where NATO bases are, rather than sort of the vast to include Russia in it as well. And so there's a lot of places to take off and land, as you were talking about, a lot of places to get fuel. The Pacific is not. How do the standard building of these fighters about range is about weight and gas, right? And so you need a lot of gas. How are you going to take care of this, or at least think about this, to keep it affordable as you work through these maturations for potential operations in the Indo-Pacific?
No, I think because the Indo-Pacific is a pretty stressing scenario for most platforms, whether it be surface, air, land, like sea, subsurface, like the Pacific is a stressing scenario no matter the domain or the platform.
Including for the adversaries. We always look at it from our side.
Oh my
The
God.
Chinese have the operational, I guess, we always like to say they play a home game, so they always have a place to go home to.
Sure, like it is no surprise. Saltwater is pretty corrosive on many things,
Yeah.
on both our side and on the adversary side. So Mother Nature plays a role in everybody's world.
Yeah.
And geography plays a role in everybody's world. What I would just say is because of the stressing nature that is the Pacific, it inherently reaps benefits upon the European theater, or provides benefits, I should say, upon the European theater. Because when you stress or size a platform for range, you can quite quickly turn that into loiter time in Europe.
Right.
And the other thing I would just say too is the interoperability factor of the having to do with the fact that many of our European allies, NATO allies, leverage very similar, if not the exact same weapon systems we do. They're US based a lot, or the data links they use are very similar, like Link 16, or the effectors that they use are very similar, like the AMRAAM, as just rough examples of things in the air domain, which are common amongst whether it's a Typhoon or a C model Eagle or a Viper, which Poland has F-16s too. So everybody is using these very similar things. What that enables is that affordability and also that comfort level if those were brought forward in future unmanned platforms. And I think that you can trade range for loiter, you have ease of supportability, comfort and supportability, and commonality amongst like how TTPs in warfare is fought.
And keeping this in Europe, given, and we're not going to get into domestic politics here, but there will be a push in Europe for more defense spending. Let's see if they actually are able to pull it off. But two, my guess is that they are going to be looking for domestic alternatives to US weapons, or in the absence of domestic alternatives, what typically happens is companies will partner with, US companies will partner with a European equivalent. And so a challenge with something like the YFQ 44, or basically anything, is more on our side to allow the Europeans to get into the supply chain. So maybe talk about how you guys are thinking about that.
I think it's a great question because it is the natural next step. Like, okay, say we want to take these things to Europe, or we want our NATO allies to leverage a YFQ 44, the Fury. What do we want?
It's the same in Asia too. It doesn't matter, right?
No, you're exactly right. And what I would just say is like our posture is to be able to support whatever is deemed the easiest, most effective way, whether it be foreign military sales or direct commercial sales. And I think what could be of interest, especially since the US government is leveraging upon these platforms open architectures with the overall goal of being able to swap hardware and software with third parties. So the YFQ-44 is but an airplane that can be layered in with host country software, host country hardware, so that you can continue to support that indigenous or local industrial base. Certainly important to everybody. And we believe that if you continue to adhere, as the US government has been pushing for, and we agree with, the openness of the platform, then you can facilitate that ease of supportability and swap as needed for any customer that might be of interest. But I'll also happily admit, we're happy to support either way, whether it be DCS, FMS, but that is still yet to be determined.
And so we're really at the nascent stages here. And so when is the first flight, and what should people be looking for in terms of next steps for this thing?
Yeah, so I'll just harness publicly available information for this answer, Aaron. And so my apologies to the woefully inadequate data drop to your listeners. But we'll be flying later on this year. That was published in said out in public by the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. And then it also, in concert with that release, showed an image of our first Tail 1 going through initial ground tests. I can confirm that is happening. And so we are marching in collaboration with the program office, Air Force test representatives, our in-house test and development folks, and we are continuing to move forward in accordance with what was said. And I'm excited that this schedule, when you think about it, if we, when we fly this year from when the contract was awarded to both us and GA just last year, it's a very quick development timeline. And when you think about the historical context of other high performance platforms in the air domain. And so I just want to implore and continue to encourage people that this is a program that's trying to do things differently, including in test. And we will continue to see milestones come out in public.
And then I guess the last one is, I think it was Secretary Kendall, who's no longer secretary now, but was very clear that this was designed to be iterative. So even if you guys win the first sort of contract here for initial production, that doesn't mean if there are follow-ons, it will be the same thing. And so really as part of an effort to re-industrialize aspects of the defense industrial base. Curious to hear your thoughts on that before we go out.
No, I'm excited for continued competition. This is something that forces the honesty and forces the creativity and forces the cycles to be dedicated by anybody who wants to participate in this effort to keep going and keep developing. I'll just key in on what you said, Secretary Kendall, and there's been no change, as far as I've seen, is the posture of the Air Force. He's publicly said this was increment 1. There will be an increment 2, and then subsequent increments from there. And I think that's right. I think that's right, because being able to facilitate modern, novel aircraft development that can then bring in novel, modern, developed hardware and software against particular mission use cases is the right way to go about it. And so I'm excited to continue to support.
Scar, thanks for carving out about 25 minutes of your time this morning. Appreciate it, man.
Aaron, appreciate your time as always. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later, guys.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Behind the Front, a special series of the Chain Reaction podcast at the Foreign Policy Research Institute. To learn more about this and many other initiatives, please visit us at fpr.org. Until next time.